In this video lesson, we will discuss a few empirical facts about unemployment and discuss some unemployment-related trends. So first thing which you will need to know is that unemployment rate in a free market economy can never be equal to zero. There are some reasons behind this, which we will discuss later in this lecture, and there is so-called natural unemployment rate. In other words, there will always be some amount of unemployment in the society, which is caused by some natural factors, which are unavoidable. If you look at the graph of how unemployment rate changed in the UK for the last probably about 60 years, you will see that it was never equal to zero. It always exceeded zero, and nowadays it's actually quite high. If you imagine a long-term trend, if you draw a long-term trend, you will see that it is upward sloping. In other words, unemployment rate tends to increase over time. If you look at the first part of this observation period, between 60s and 75 approximately, the average unemployment rate was relatively low, about 2%, while nowadays it's considerably higher, about 6%. And it was never equal to zero. It's not possible to achieve zero unemployment rate in the market economy. Strictly speaking, you can force every single person to work if your country is a prison. It's like a political camp, like North Korea or Soviet Union. You can force everyone to work when you can control every single individual, every single person in your society, which of course cannot take place in a free market economy. That's why unemployment cannot be equal to zero. Next. Unemployment rate varies by geographical region. In different countries, unemployment rate will be different. It varies by age, as you will see from the table on the next slide. Unemployment is considerably higher for younger people. It varies by gender, and frequently it varies by ethnic group, with ethnic minorities frequently demonstrating considerably higher unemployment rates. So let's have a look at some statistics. These are data for a lot of developed countries, unemployment in many developed countries. Total unemployment, as you can see, varies. For example, in Eurozone, the average unemployment rate is about 11%. But different countries will have different unemployment rates. For example, in France, it's about 10%. In Germany, it's about 5%. In Italy, it's higher, 12%. In Portugal, it's even higher, 14%. In Spain and Greece, it's dramatically high. It's about 2 times more than average for the Eurozone, 25% and 23%. In the UK, it's more or less average. It's not too high, it's not too low. There are some countries like Norway and Japan where unemployment is considerably lower. UK is somewhere in the middle. What you can notice, however, is that unemployment will vary between male and female workers. Again, in some countries, unemployment among females will be lower. For example, in Germany, you can see that unemployment among females will be 4.6%, while among males it will be 5.3%. Similar situation is in Japan, similar situation is in the UK. In our country, females are more likely to find a job and less likely to be unemployed compared to males. While in some other countries, for example, in Greece, situation will be totally the opposite. In Greece, it's much more difficult for a woman to find a job if she has lost it. The same is true for Italy. So I would say, or Spain, so countries in the south of Eurozone. So I would say this probably depends on cultural features, on cultural specifics of a particular country, or specific institutional factors of the labor market itself. What, however, is true for all countries is that unemployment for people who are less than 25 years old, for young people, is considerably higher compared to more mature workers. For example, for Eurozone overall, unemployment among young people tends to be about 2 times higher. However, the numbers for different countries vary dramatically. Unemployment among young people in Greece is more than 50%. So literally every second person in Greece who is young is unemployed. They are unable to find a job. In Portugal, unemployment among young people is 3 times higher compared to the average unemployment rate, while in our country, it's about 4 to 5 times higher compared to the average unemployment rate. So if you are a mature person, you are much less likely to be without job. While if you are a young person, it's very difficult to find a job. That is why it is very, very important to get your very first job quickly, so that you don't stay without work for an extended period of time. We will discuss how the length of unemployment affects your chances of finding a job in the future. So when you graduate, please make sure that you make every effort and try and find a good and proper job, because your first job is critical. It's very important for your CV. As soon as you acquire a few years of work experience, you will move to this category. You will move into mature workers part of the labor force, and it will become so much easier for you to progress in your career. That is why while you're at university, please try to acquire some job experience, especially if you can go on a placement. This will help you to boost your chances of getting a proper job after your graduation. And this table also contains some further statistics on the differences between male and female unemployment for different age groups. Next, standardized unemployment rates will differ, as you know, in different countries, but what you can notice on this graph is that sometimes they tend to move together. For example, here, red line shows unemployment in the UK, while blue line shows unemployment in America. And you can see here that we tend to experience spikes around the same time. Unemployment tends to increase both in the UK and in America around the same period. When it drops in both countries. Or here, we can observe that during the financial crisis, during the period of recession, when there was a global recession throughout the world between about 2007 and 2010, unemployment increased in all countries. Eurozone shown by green, America shown by blue line, red line shown UK, and even Japan, which tends to have considerably low unemployment rate. When the world recovered from this recession, unemployment rate decreased in all these countries. Next. Apparently, unemployment is one of the major macroeconomic policy objectives. It is critical for the government to eliminate unemployment or reduce unemployment to lowest possible levels. This is due to very high cost of unemployment to society. First of all, of course, to the unemployed themselves and to their families. Because when you are unemployed, you cannot earn income, you cannot earn a living, you cannot pay for your bills, you cannot support yourself. It puts additional pressure on public finances. You will need to rely on benefits. You can get depressed, and moreover, the problem is you lose your skills. When you are unemployed, especially if you remain unemployed for a long period of time, you tend to lose your professional skills, which can reduce your chances of becoming employed in the future, of finding some job. Just imagine if you were a business owner and you tried to hire someone to fill a vacancy in your particular business, and there are two people who are applying with the same qualifications, with same skills, same experience, everything is the same. CVs are nearly identical, but one person is currently working and they're looking to switch jobs, maybe because they relocate to another geographical area, or they're looking for a promotion, and another person remained unemployed for the last 3 years. Who will you hire? Would you prefer? Wouldn't you be suspicious about the person who remained unemployed for a long period of time? So when you see a gap in CV, you can become suspicious. What happened to this person? Why this person wasn't working? So strictly speaking, the longer is the gap in your employment history, the more difficult it can be for you to find your next job. And generally, there is an observation that the higher the unemployment rate in the society is, the more difficult it is to find a job, which means that the longer unemployment tends to last. And the other way around, the longer unemployment lasts, the more difficult it will be for people to find a job, and the higher unemployment rate will be. What else you also need to know is that duration of unemployment depends on the phase of the business cycle. Long-term unemployment is more likely to take place after the long recession. Just think about this. This should make sense because recession implies that our currently is underproducing output compared to its long-term potential. So when we are at the bottom of the business cycle, so if you imagine that this is our long-term trend and this is GDP, actual GDP, which fluctuates around this trend, and we are currently somewhere here at the bottom, this is the timeline, and we are at the bottom of the business cycle, which means that we are current year, we are currently underproducing compared to where we could be producing, which means that our output is low, employment is low as well. We don't produce that much output, which means that we don't need so many workers, which means that unemployment will be very high. And we have been underproducing for quite a while during this long recession. So for a long period of time, maybe for several years, sometimes maybe even a decade, we are producing less than normal, which means that our economy required less than normal number of workers, which means that for several years, many workers will not be able to find a job. And that is why they will remain unemployed for an extended period of time. So generally, after this period of long recession, unemployment rate, especially the long-term unemployment, tends to be the highest. Actually, we can have a look at this graph, which actually confirms this observation. Please focus on this spike in the long-term unemployment. This graph shows how overall unemployment rate changed. So the total height of these bars shows total unemployment, and you can see here that it actually was the highest between 2009 and 2013. Our economy and the rest of the world has experienced a recession during this period between 2007 and 2009. In 2009, the economy started to recover, but unemployment kept increasing. Unemployment lags behind GDP, and actually it reached the maximum in 2011. So a recession was over, but unemployment was not. It was still at the very, very high rate. So generally, the time is required for the economy to recover, for businesses to start hiring new workers, and unemployment to decline. And you can see here that the red bars showing the longer term unemployment was actually the highest at the end of this recession. During the recession itself, during the bottom part of the business cycle, it was not the highest. The long-term unemployment was maximized at the end of the recession, when the economy started to recover, but people were still unable to find a job. So generally, the longer you remain unemployed, the higher the amount of long-term unemployment, the higher the rate of unemployment will be. So we'll have the highest count of unemployed people in the society. Just be aware of this and try to avoid an extended periods of unemployment, extended periods of gaps in your career, in your future professional life. To summarize, the duration of unemployment is affected by a few factors. First of all, the level of unemployment rate itself, which is the stock variable. I'll come back to this in a few minutes. It also depends on inflows and outflows from the stock of unemployment. Here, in the next video lesson, we'll try to distinguish between the stock and flow to and from unemployment. And it also depends on the phase of the business cycle. So now let's proceed to these ideas, the difference between flow and stock variables, which are related to measurement of unemployment.